These creepypastas are guaranteed to make your skin crawl. So turn off the lights, grab some headphones, and get ready for our ultimate Halloween special. 666 Creepypastas, Part 3. Let's do this. First up, we have to look at this story that has got to be one of the most messed up ones yet. I mean, you will never, ever look at the sky the same way again after reading this. Story 1. The City That Never Had a Name. In the late 20th century, a group of explorers were trekking deep into the Amazon rainforest when they stumbled upon something incredible, something that should not have been possible. The ruins of a massive city carved out of solid rock, yet was no mention of it in any text, no oral histories from indigenous tribes, and nothing even remotely similar in any other cultures. It was as if it had never existed until that very moment when they uncovered it. It was an ancient city, its buildings carved into the jungle floor with such precision and detail that it looked almost alien. The explorers began to uncover more about the place, exploring the vast avenues lined with monolithic columns and discovering monumental structures, which seemed to have no purpose other than to impress. There were temples with strange symbols etched into their walls and huge statues that depicted beings with multiple arms and heads. But the most bizarre aspect of this discovery was the absence of any historical record of the city's existence. There were no official documents, no archaeological evidence that pointed to its existence prior to their discovery. It was like the city had been hidden from human knowledge throughout history. Even the locals seemed to know very little about the ruins, referring to it only as the place where stars weep and refusing to go anywhere near it. They told stories of strange lights that could be seen around the ruins at night, accompanied by sounds so terrifying that nobody dared investigate further. But what really made this discovery disturbing was what the explorers found out through satellite scans of the city. As the scans revealed the true scale of the site, it became clear that the city was not just a random collection of ruins. It was actually shaped like a giant summoning circle, miles wide, with the center buried deep beneath the jungle floor. The explorers realized that they had stumbled upon a place of immense power, a place where the veil between the physical world and the spiritual realm was at its thinnest. As they delved deeper into their investigation, they uncovered more disturbing details about the city. For example, they discovered that every single pillar had a sigil burned into the stone, and these sigils seemed to be a type of code. Some of the pillars also bore strange etchings that depicted scenes of unimaginable horror and suffering. The explorers could not decipher the meaning of these etchings, but they could feel the pain and terror that they evoked. Then there was the strange behavior of the local wildlife. The animals seemed to avoid the city at all costs, and any animal that came too close was met with an unknown force that drove them mad and sent them running into the forest. The explorers were not sure what this force was, but they knew that it was something powerful and malevolent. As the exploration continued, the explorers began to experience strange phenomena themselves. They started having vivid nightmares of a dark, horned figure who seemed to be watching them from afar. They also started hearing whispers in the forest that seemed to come from the spirits of those who had died in the city. The whispers told stories of a great evil that once resided in the city, an evil that was now stirring. And then there was the most disturbing discovery of all. One of the explorers, a man named John, was found days later, alone and wandering in the jungle. He was naked, covered in mud, and his eyes were missing. When the other explorers found him, he was babbling incoherently, repeating the same phrase over and over again. "It is done. It is complete. The Father is returning." Before anyone could stop him, John tore off his own hands and folded them in prayer before collapsing to the ground and dying. His last journal entry read, "This city wasn't abandoned. It was sealed from heaven." It seems that whatever entity had once lived in the city was stirring again, and John had somehow become its vessel. This discovery shook the scientific community to its core. Many experts refused to believe that such a place could exist, let alone that it was located in the heart of the Amazon. But the evidence was undeniable. The explorers had uncovered a secret that had been hidden for centuries. A secret that threatened to change everything we know about the world. What was the name of this city? Well, there isn't one because it never had one. But what we do know is that Lucifer once ruled a kingdom, not in hell, but here on earth, and it is waking. So, do you think you could survive a night in this city? 'Cause I certainly couldn't. I would hightail it out of there faster than you could say spooky season. Now, let's move on to our next creepypasta. Coffin 2. The Scarecrow. When I was young, I used to live on a farm in the middle of nowhere. A real farm, not one of those fake ones, with a couple of chickens and a petting zoo. My dad grew crops and had hundreds of acres of fields to take care of. In the fall, the field hands would put up bales of hay, and my dad would burn the rest of the stalks. One day in October, my friend Travis and I decided to skip school and go hunting. We walked down the dirt road that led to the far end of the property, where the woods started. We didn't have permission to go into the woods, and we knew we would get killed if my dad caught us. But we needed to get away from the pressures of school and life, so we went anyway. We planned to just walk around and explore for a while. We had a .22 rifle with a few boxes of ammo. We were only going to use it if we saw a bushy tail or something. After about an hour, we had only seen 2 deer, a hawk, and a bunch of squirrels. We sat on a fallen log, and I asked Travis if he wanted to go back home, because I was starting to feel guilty. He said he wanted to keep walking, so I agreed. 5 minutes later, we heard what sounded like screams in the forest. So we froze and listened. They sounded like women screaming, and they lasted about 10 seconds. Then there was silence. I told Travis we needed to go back. He said, "No way," turned around and walked deeper into the woods. I was scared, but I liked Travis, so I followed him. We walked in silence for a while until we came across a clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a scarecrow, maybe 7 feet tall, made out of old clothes and straw. I thought it was weird that it was in a clearing, but I didn't say anything. Walked past it, and I heard a loud thud. I turned back to see the scarecrow, and it had turned around. I thought it was weird, but I shrugged it off. Travis shot it in the head, and it fell over. We laughed and ran away. Later, I found out that the farm my family had rented had belonged to an old farmer who had killed himself a few years back. The police had never found his body, though. It was strange that the scarecrow had moved, but I figured there must have been a reasonable explanation. What I didn't know was that it would change my life forever. A week later, I was homesick from school. My mom had gone to visit her sisters, and my dad was working. I was sitting on the couch watching TV when I heard a knock at the door. I walked over and peeked through the window. Nobody was there. I thought maybe the wind had blown the door open, so I opened it and stepped outside. The door slammed shut behind me. I tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. I screamed for my dad, but my voice wouldn't come out. I started to panic. Was I being stalked by a serial killer? Had someone kidnapped me? Why was I outside? I searched for the window, but it was pitch black, and I couldn't find it. I was totally alone and totally helpless. I heard a knock again. I walked toward the sound, and my blood ran cold. There in front of me stood the scarecrow, slowly moving its head. I turned and ran in the opposite direction, but wherever I went, the scarecrow was there, silently following me. I tripped and fell, scraping my knees. The scarecrow approached me, and I curled up into a ball, hugging myself. Then I heard a familiar voice. "Hey, why aren't you in school?" It was Travis. He smiled and handed me his rifle. "Here, shoot me." I was confused. "Why would I shoot you?" "Akani." He looked sad and mumbled, "Because I'm the monster. I'm the one who killed the farmer, Akani, in the cornfield. I've been stalking you since you skipped school with me. I've been waiting for you to kill me." I didn't know what to do. I dropped the gun and ran into the house. I don't remember much after that. My mom showed up, and I told her what happened. She looked at me strangely and said, "You were home the whole time." you were never outside. I checked my phone and saw that I had missed hundreds of calls and texts from my dad. Apparently, he had been looking for me everywhere. I still don't know if Travis is real or if I imagined him. I hope he's dead. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then check out part 1 and part 2 of our 666 creepypasta series. Welcome to story 2, The Ritual of the 13th Saint. Some say the Vatican keeps a list of saints that never made it into the official books. Their holiness turned into horror. They are the ones they keep buried. Okay. And you don't want to be digging around down there, because once you find their bones, well, let's just say you'll wish you had stayed in the grave. Now, this story takes place back in the dark days of the 4th century. Back then, Christianity was illegal and persecution was everywhere. So when the Lord gave gifts to a man named Valentine, everyone thought he was a real miracle worker. Now, this guy could heal any sickness, even raise the dead. But some say he took his powers a little too far, like when he brought back someone from the dead for the second time. Apparently, it really messed with that person's head. It's 'cause you can imagine how people felt when he pulled that move over and over again. After the third resurrection, Valentine was summoned to Rome, and the judge asked him, "Are you a servant of the Lord or a servant of Satan?" Cool? Now, obviously, Valentine chose the Lord, but as punishment, the judge chained him to a chariot and whipped him across the city. After that, he was locked in a tower, but at least he still had his sight and hearing. That is, until he was baptized and became the first Saint Valentine. So, here's what happened next. Some accounts say the priest came to baptize him so he could become a martyr. Others say Satan got to that priest, and when he baptized Valentine, it actually damned his soul. Either way, when Valentine left the tower, something was very wrong. His eyes were pitch black. He ripped off his shackles, and while people were praying the Lord's Prayer, he screamed, "I am Lucifer." Then he raised up his hands, and thunder boomed across the sky. People panicked, fell down dead. Valentine just kept screaming, "Lucifer, Lucifer." And that's when the church realized something terrifying. Maybe they made a mistake. See, some say that when Valentine was chained up, Satan made a deal with him. If he converted, Satan would grant him great power, and unfortunately, it worked. Soon, Valentine was leading his own congregation. And as his followers grew, so did his power. But he never forgot about that old life. And every night, he'd wake up screaming, "Get behind me, Lucifer." Then, one day, right before Mass, Pope Sylvester, I found him shaking in his boots. And apparently, the Pope knew something we don't. He knew Valentine wasn't acting possessed. He actually was possessed. And to save him, the Pope gathered 12 other popes, blessed some chains, and locked Valentine in a tower. They made sure he had food and water and everything else he needed, but no one was allowed to talk to him. No one but God. Now, for over 20 years, Valentine waited. He prayed and he repented and he screamed, and the only thing anyone ever heard was that last part. But after 20 years, he stopped speaking. No one knows what he said in those final moments, but many believe he confessed everything. Then he died in 397 AD, and his body was buried under the floor of the Roman Basilica. But some say it's not that easy to keep a good man down. Because in the year 2020, one of those iron chains broke. It just snapped while an earthquake shook the basilica. And when workers came to repair it, they noticed something. The chain was broken at the spot where Valentine supposedly confessed his sins. Some said it was a sign from God, others a warning, but no one expected what happened next. Because in the weeks after the earthquake, people started seeing him everywhere. There were sightings of Valentine in Italy, Germany, and Brazil. In fact, he appeared in so many places, police started investigating, but I guess even they couldn't handle a ghost. And soon, everyone agreed it was time to lay Valentine to rest. The problem was, no one knew where his body was buried. The records were destroyed. The legend was buried along with him. But some say the truth always comes out. So they decided to dig up every inch of the basilica floor. And when they finally found Valentine's bones, they were taken to a new church built on the old foundation. But of course, the church didn't stop there. They opened up a full investigation into his life. They checked the records, talked to people, scoured through old documents. And that's when they discovered something terrible. What if Valentine wasn't a holy man at all? What if he was a servant of Satan? You see, there were rumors going all the way back to the 4th century. Rumors that Valentine was born into Satanism. Rumors that he wasn't a miracle worker, but a warlock. In fact, some say he was a spy planted by the enemy. The only question was, why? Why would Satan send a spy to the early church? Well, you don't have to wait long to find out, because after they dug up Valentine's body, a hidden sect surfaced. They identified themselves as Valentine's disciples, and they explained everything. See, the Vatican was right. Valentine wasn't a saint. He was Lucifer, and they called him back with a secret ritual. They needed 13 candles, 13 names, and 13 drops of blood. Okay? When they combined those ingredients, it didn't bring back a saint. It brought back a monster. Okay? And now he was free to do whatever he wanted. So here's the plan. For every 700 years, they would revive him to carry out a new mission. But you may be wondering, why exactly do they need 13 of everything? Well, according to an ancient text, it was the key to Valentine's power. 13 represents chaos. It's an unlucky number in our world, but in hell, it's the highest honor. Okay? Demons count their legions in 13s, so it only makes sense that Valentine needed 13 of everything. It's just another sign that he isn't a servant of God, but of the devil. And by now, you probably think he was sent to spy on the church. Maybe he was supposed to lead sinners to hell, maybe steal the Eucharist, or plant false scripture. But if you're thinking that, then I have some bad news for you, because according to legend, Valentine didn't come back to spy. He came back to conquer. When the Vatican discovered the letter, they immediately hid Valentine's body once again, this time in a secret chamber underneath St. Peter's Basilica. But those cultists didn't stop there. They went to the Vatican, confronted the Pope, and told him everything. They told him how they planned to bring back Valentine and use him to destroy Christianity. So the Pope called in every major cardinal, bishop, and priest and told them about the impending doom. To make things worse, it was the night before Valentine's Day. So as the priests were making their confessions, the sky turned black. They felt the ground shake, and when they ran outside, they saw a single candle floating above the square, and hovering around it were 12 men. Those men were Valentine's disciples. They were ready to bring back their master. They placed the 13th candle on the altar and held up their knives. The first disciple read a prayer. The second one cut open his palm. The third one stepped forward and dropped in 13 drops of blood. As soon as that happened, Valentine appeared. But he wasn't the man they remembered. His flesh was rotting. He had fangs and claws, and when he opened his mouth, it looked like a pit of fire. Then he unleashed a sulfur stench, turned into a giant bat, and flew away. So I ask you, are we doomed? Is Lucifer loose once again? Or maybe he never left? Okay, before you go, remember, most legends are based on real events, real people, places, and things. So, before you think this is all made up, consider this. How did Valentine's bones end up in the church? Why did those chains break exactly 13 seconds during the earthquake? Okay? What does it mean that they're calling him Lucifer? Okay? Well, I'll leave that up to you. Okay? But if you want to know more, stay tuned for more stories. So, story 3 is when Lucifer possessed the sky. Now, this is an urban legend that cropped up online in the early 2010s, but is presented as a historical account of an event that took place in 2019. It starts out like a creepypasta, but then takes some very strange turns. For 1 hour on March 2019, all the birds in a city in Russia suddenly went silent. No winds blew, even though clouds were moving overhead. And the sky turned a dim gray, even though the sun was still shining brightly. People described hearing a low hum, like a breath held across the face of the planet. According to security footage, people paused mid-step, turned their heads toward nothing, and wept. That's where it starts to take a turn from your standard creepypasta. Because this event didn't affect just the people in the city. At 11:47 a.m. UTC, radio operators around the world intercepted a pulse that repeated exactly every 66.6 seconds. This was a real broadcast on a real ham radio frequency. One operator managed to record it and upload it to the internet. When scientists ran the signal through an encoder, it turned out to be a voice. It was heavily layered and distorted, but it was almost definitely a male voice speaking in Russian. A linguist cried when she decoded it. According to the blog it was posted on, she said it said, quote, "I no longer whisper. I have become the air." Now, according to a report by the Siberian Times, a local newspaper in the area of the city where this took place spoke to witnesses who claimed the sky had turned green before the silence fell. They also quoted a psychic named Marina Orlova, who said the world experienced the moment of holding, which she said happens once every 3,600 years and affects the whole of humanity. It's not clear what any of this means or why the moment happened now, but it does appear that something unprecedented occurred, both physically and mentally. Whatever it was, it lasted for only 60 minutes. In the aftermath, people reported experiencing psychological trauma related to the event. Some developed phobias. Others began seeing psychiatrists to help them cope with anxiety attacks. There are videos on YouTube claiming to show people having nervous breakdowns over this phenomenon. But it's not clear how many of these videos are actually from this event. There are hundreds of news articles written about this event, and there's even a song by a Russian band called Lucifer about it. Scientists seem to have largely ignored it. But the Vatican released this statement, quote, "We are living through a great purification, a spiritual crisis that will end only with the triumph of faith, hope, and love, the three theological virtues which sustain us in moments of trial." The Vatican also implied that the silence of the birds may have been caused by, quote, "an exceptional natural phenomenon such as a geomagnetic storm or solar flares," but it also referred to it as the moment of holding too. There are lots of ways to interpret this event. It could be nothing more than a viral hoax. People have made similar claims about Jesus appearing in the sky and other religious figures appearing in fast food restaurant meals before. But if you want to look at it through a more fantastical lens, maybe we can learn something about Lucifer. In the Bible, Lucifer was originally an angel. He rebelled against God and was cast out of heaven. According to Christian theology, he and his followers became the demons of hell, and Lucifer became Satan. Christians generally believe that Satan can possess people and control them to do his bidding. We see examples of this in the Bible, like when he tempted Jesus in the wilderness and when he drove a man to kill King Saul. Possession is usually temporary though. After the book of Revelation, Lucifer is supposed to be sealed away in a place called the Abyss for 1,000 years until he's eventually thrown into a lake of fire. But what if instead of possessing individuals, he possesses the world? What if he doesn't drive us to evil, but becomes us? This story seems to imply that Lucifer has free reign of the earth, at least for that 1 hour. The idea of Lucifer as a fallen angel is borrowed from Zoroastrianism, specifically the figure of Angra Mainyu. The concept of the fallen angel is thought to have been popularized by the Renaissance philosopher Marsilio Ficino, who adapted Zoroastrian ideas for a Christian audience. Lucifer is associated with light. In Latin, Lucifer means light bearer. This would make sense if you were a fallen angel, a light that was once pure but became corrupted. Lucifer can corrupt the purest thing in existence, light itself. Then anything is possible. If Lucifer can possess the sky, he can possess anything. When he possesses the sky, he doesn't just influence it or bend it to his will. He becomes it entirely. All things become Lucifer. Everything looks gray, even though the sun is shining. Light is no longer pure, and the birds fall silent because they're singing Lucifer's praises. This isn't really a new idea. Philosophers have long debated whether matter and energy are interchangeable. It's whether everything is just different forms of the same thing. Albert Einstein famously advanced the equivalence of mass and energy with his equation E equals mc squared. And while scientists debate how much energy is in the universe, no one knows how much matter exists. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe the mass of the universe is infinite because the energy of the universe is infinite. If everything is composed of the same stuff, then maybe everything can be possessed by Lucifer. If you wanted to write a story about Lucifer possessing the sky, you might think about writing about the sun going out, but not completely going out. Maybe it dims or takes on a sickly green hue. You could write about the gravitational pull of the earth weakening or the atmosphere becoming poisonous. You could write about the curvature of the earth flattening or the ocean tides reversing. You could write about the laws of physics changing or the fabric of reality tearing. 'Cause if Lucifer can possess the sky, he can possess anything. You could write about how the faces of loved ones twist into grotesque masks, or how their voices become alien and harsh. You could write about how dogs stop barking and cats stop purring, how crickets stop chirping and frogs stop croaking, how every sound in the universe becomes a hymn to Lucifer. In the end, this is all speculation, of course. Stories like this one present interesting opportunities to think outside the box. If we consider the possibility that Lucifer can possess the sky, what else can he possess? And if everything is just energy anyway, what is left for him to possess? That's the end of the third story in our series, When Lucifer Possessed the Sky. Are you a fan of stories like this? Let me know down below. I've been your host. Join us next time for more stories about hell and the underworld. Until then, remember, John shot first.